And everyone beware, because they're not going to stop. They're not going to stop before Election Day in November, and they're not going to stop after Election Day. And that should be, everyone should take note of that. And this is a movement, I'm telling you, they're not going to stop. And that should be, everyone should take note of that. They're not going to let up, and they should not. And we should not.
Well, everybody, second time is indeed the charm. Let me make sure that my good mic is on, because we'll have to double check now that we're going back to audio's good, video's good. And yes, share the link around, people. There was a bit of a glitch in Rumble Studio, so we're going to kick it up with StreamYard and not hopefully have we're live across all platforms. Just before I even get further into this, because I want to talk about that Kamala Harris thing in a few seconds, let's make sure that we are good all across the various planes of the interwebs. We are good. We're on Locals. We are on Rumble. I don't care if we're on Twitter, but I know that we are on Twitter anyhow. And that's it. Good. I'm sweating a little bit, but we look to be live everywhere. Bada bing, bada boom. Excellent. And so because we are live everywhere, now that I can confirm this and affirm this, I see Barnes is in the backdrop. But before I bring Barnes in, I want to bring up something here, because you'll notice as we're talking about the news and the government, and as you pop into the stream and it says this stream contains a paid promotion, and it does. This article, which I think everybody should be very familiar with, from May 2024. FDA says it's preparing for a bird flu pandemic in one that could kill 1 in 4 Americans. That's if we believe the FDA. The fine folks at the Wellness Company, one of our sponsors for the evening, is raising the flag right now. They put out a bunch of great products. And at a time now when they're warning of what the next thing is going to be, the bird flu pandemic, it's our responsibility to be prepared for the next thing. Fortunately, you can get medication like Tamiflu easy without having to book an office appointment with your old physician. The Wellness Company, the sponsor, they produce a number of great products. They've developed the Contagion Emergency Kit, a prescription-only stockpile of life-saving medications, including Tamiflu, ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine, Z-Pak, medications that every American should have in the medicine cabinet. Do you have what you need the next time around? Because there will be a next time around. And most doctors might not be prescribing what they were not allowed to prescribe the last time around. We can now say the words ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine. Suck on it, YouTube. But if you don't have these things, you want to have them in your emergency medical cabinet. Easily order online the one-of-a-kind prescription Contagion Emergency Kit from the Wellness Company. Each kit provides you with a carefully selected assortment of effective medications for bird flu, COVID-19, other respiratory illnesses. The medications include ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine, Z-Pak, Tamiflu, budesonide, along with a nebulizer. Rest easy knowing that you have the emergency meds on hand, along with a guidebook for safe use, backed by research from experts like Dr. Peter McCullough. Every American should have at least one of these kits in their home. Avoid the chaos, the wait, and the price gouging that comes with every crisis, because nobody lets a good crisis go to waste. Avoid the hospitals. Order this for the cost of a single doctor's visit. At the end of the day, having these life-saving medications on hand will make sure that you don't have to worry about whatever is going to happen next. Go to twc.health/Viva. Grab your emergency contagion kit right now. twc.health/Viva. That'll save you $30 on checkout plus free shipping. Kits are only available in the USA. So, Canadians, what can I tell you? You get what you vote for, and unfortunately, sometimes so does everyone else. Barnes is in the backdrop. I want to bring him right now because we have a bit of a slow start to tonight's stream. Everybody, I'm going to go blast the links around. If you are so inclined, go to Twitter and share the link of the new stream, because the old link obviously will not work for obvious reasons. I'm going to bring in Biggity Barnes as we we'll have our last crappy internet stream before I make the way down from the iron gulag of the Maple Rainbow to the free state of Florida. And I'm contemplating, Robin, you tell me if you think it's worth the 2 or 3 hour detour. Do I drive through Butler, Pennsylvania on the way down and try to get into the buildings, or is that going to be totally off limits to journalists?
It's probably going to be totally off limits. I am in discussions with someone who was actually one of the victims that day. We may be able to have the bandwidth to represent them going forward. But yeah, my guess is that they'll have it locked down.
So maybe I'm not, because it adds. It's weird. It's in Pennsylvania, but it makes us go like a good hour and a half west and then back down. So you have to go from the 87 to whatever that one is, the 91. So if I can't get a guarantee that I'll be able to get in, I'm not sure I'm driving now with a kid and 2 dogs, so might not want to add 3 hours to a 24-hour drive. Robert, sir, how goes the battle?
Good. We got good interesting load tonight. The First Amendment case that's going to go up to the Supreme Court. Second Amendment case, big Second Amendment win against the ATF, another one. The trans rights, they may be winning at the Olympics, but they're not winning in court, and at least the Biden's version of it. The jury bias, when that becomes of relevance to a potential verdict. Judicial recusal, there's a case up before the Supreme Court, and we had Judge Engoron deciding whether he would disqualify himself. No shock what his answer would be. Defamation law, big win by Gina Carano. Her win really is of greater consequence than just her case, because it explains what Hollywood thought was their defense to all of the political discrimination they've engaged in over the last decade or so. The terror watch list goes up to court. Prisoner and probationer rights in court. Initiative rights. The ballot access, which was the top voted topic, was up before the California Supreme Court. And the Democratic Party continues to try to find creative ways to keep Robert Kennedy off the ballot with more lawsuits. When you get a boneless wing that has a big bone in it, and yet the courts say you can't sue. Amos Miller case, and a few other fun little tidbits here and there.
Robert, I mean, but it's not on the list, but it's something that we obviously have to discuss, although we've discussed it previously. Trump filed an FEC complaint. First of all, okay, we got to get into all of this. Trump filed an FEC complaint, basically arguing that Kamala Harris's switching of the name to, President, what was it? Biden for president to Harris for president, and trying to money grab the $91 million in donations. He said it's the biggest heist. It's the biggest excessive campaign contribution in the history of America. So he's filed the FEC complaint. The articles are saying, that this could freeze up the $93 million. I don't know if it does. The process, explain what would happen. Will they have access to that money? Is it going to be a question of fighting over it after the fact? And tell me if you think that there's any potential merit to the argument that Kamala Harris takes to Twitter on Friday and says, I'm just now filling out my forms for the candidacy for the president. How on earth she thinks she can then steal that $91 million? How does it work? What do you think the grounds are, the likelihood of success? Is that money frozen until there's an adjudication of it? And is Kamala really raising all the money that she claims to be raising?
Yeah, I mean, my view is that the money raised for Biden was raised for Biden. It was raised in the name of the Biden for presidency campaign. And I don't think that money can be simply transferred to Kamala Harris's campaign, because if it could be, then what you would have is you could have 20 people run for office, and it's a disguised way to illegally fund one of the candidates when 19 of them drop out and give all of their money to the one candidate. So that's why it can't really function that way. And even though she was on the ticket, she wasn't yet on the ticket. So this was a Biden for president campaign, not Harris. Harris wasn't going to be on there until the Democratic National Convention confirmed her as being on the ticket for 2024. And so, in my opinion, and just rather reaffirmed by the fact that she recognizes she needs her own campaign committee and that she's just now registering for it. So I think legally she should not have access to that nearly 100 million or so. Practically speaking, the way that often goes is the FEC has limited enforcement power. They usually decide to issue some fine after the election. So they can't freeze the bank accounts. I guess some people affiliated with in Trump world may bring suit over this, as well as whether or not she's entitled to simply replace Biden on the ballot. But my guess is that the courts will not intervene. She'll get to use that money, might get fined for it later, but she won't care. There's the separate issue, two separate issues, as James O'Keefe has continued to expose. By the way, someone else that Whitney Webb and all of her so-called genius thinks is part of the deep state is James O'Keefe. That gives you an idea how dumb she is. Her fan group want me to debate her. I'm like, not a single word of your responses would inspire me to want to debate her. I mean, you're not supposed to pick on retards, so I'm going to try to avoid that. But her whole constituency is made up of these like overgrown 6-year-olds.
I'm trying not to
look at their responses on Twitter and social media. I mean, you were nice enough to give her a platform. The quality of her audience is really poor. I mean, if you're going to respond, at least respond intelligently. But James O'Keefe has done a great job. He's done this before, documenting and detailing how the Democratic Party is laundering campaign donations through people who don't know that they're making donations to the Democratic Party. And he documented it again with Kamala Harris. He's been finding real people who supposedly gave her thousands of dollars. And they're like, I've never given her any money. And they're usually like blue collar people who don't have that kind of wherewithal to resource in the first place. So it appears that what they're doing is they're using their new app technology of ActBlue to launder donations from people who don't realize they're making donations, often are not actually out of their bank accounts making those donations. They're laundering somebody else's donations into the Harris campaign. And Harris has a notorious history of this. Peter Schweitzer has started to talk about her long history of illegal activities in California. There was a case I was a part of where her attorney general's office intervened to prevent a case going forward that involved $1 billion fraud by the Lennar Corporation against the California Pension Fund. That's against the people of the state of California. $1 billion. And her attorney general's office intervened to shut it down because she has a close political relationship with the Lennar Corporation, as does Pelosi and Newsom and some other people in the state of California. And that's just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to the political scandals she's involved in. So we'll see if anything is done about it. I mean, I can't imagine the Biden Justice Department's going to do anything about it. Maybe one of these state attorney generals will do something about this because this appears to be some form of fraud, not just a federal violation, but a state violation. So maybe they'll do something about it. I know the attorney general from Missouri is talking about getting involved in big tech, once again, trying to manipulate the election by suppressing results. If you search Google, you won't find border czar Kamala Harris. You will if you search any other search engine. If you search for assassination attempt, the name Trump won't come up, even though it just happened a few weeks ago on Google searches. So once again, big tech intervening on behalf of the Olympics was exposed doing a horrendous presentation that mocked Christianity, and they abused the power of the copyright protection to hide the fact of what they did, the scandal of what they did from people. Now, credit to Rumble. Rumble refused to recognize those bogus copyright strikes. But yeah, we're going to see a lot of illegality. It's what Kamala Harris has been known for her whole life, her whole career. But we're probably not going to see consequence from it, unfortunately, before Election Day.
Let me bring this up if I can bring it up here. This is I heard the reports. Let me see if we're going to be able to see this because the internet is equal for all. All right. Well, it's the flipping thing is
Kamala Harris level
here we go.
Equality or
yeah,
equity.
I won't make the screen too big. It's internet equity in Canada. So I did this just because assassination, and you get assassination. I don't even know what that is. Attempts, okay. Assassination attempts on Hitler, because that's what we're looking for these days.
Yeah, of
Then
course.
I tried to put in TR on Truman. I mean, in fairness, I didn't know that there was an assassination attempt on Truman, so I guess I'm going to want to learn more about that. Ronald Reagan, Donald Wiki. I mean, I don't even know what this is. So and I actually, now that you mention it, I want to take a little credit. I remember back in the day when the European Union was talking about that copyright bill and they were going to go strong on copyright, enforcing copyright. And I was like, they're going to use that for political strong arming by, say, I don't know, if there's a video of Macron doing something with another man, whatever, just hypothetically, and people share that video, well, someone will buy the copyright to that and then take it down so that people can't actually see newsworthy events. I have to go back and find when I said that. And it's amazing. They're doing it right now. Robert, I'm trying to steel man the argument. What could account for why it's not coming up in search results, even in the composition, both on Google and apparently on DuckDuckGo? What's the steel man for why that is?
There isn't one. I mean,
Okay.
they're just manipulating the algorithms. It's what they've been doing. Robert Epstein's been talking about it for years. They've deliberately manipulated those to shade voters in certain ways. And they can have more influence typically at a lower level of election than the U.S. presidential election, but they're going to try. No doubt about that. And so, credit to James O'Keefe for outing this fraudulent donation money laundering activity. What should happen with the donors that gave to Biden, that money should go back to those donors. And if they want to give to Kamala, then they can give to Kamala. But that's how it should work. I mean, we really have the idiocracy president. I mean, she's basically Camacho, President Camacho from Idiocracy. It's Kamala. She sounds like him. She acts like him. She behaves like him. Has the IQ of him. It's extraordinary witnessing. It dawned on me over the weekend. I'll be on with Richard Barris, the People's Pundit, on What Are the Odds tomorrow, probably at 2 p.m. Eastern time, thereabouts, and we'll be breaking down the impact of the J.D. Vance pick for vice president, the impact of the assassination attempt and the fallout related to it politically, the impact of Kamala Harris replacing Joe Biden, and preview the Democratic convention and what the media is going to do. But what's clear is the Democratic Party concluded that their problem wasn't that the economy isn't working for working class people in terms of housing, in terms of cost of living, in terms of transportation, in terms of quality employment, etc. The problem isn't the border crisis and the illegal immigrants flowing across the border and the crime and other economic issues related thereto. The problem is not all these wars abroad, war in the Middle East, war in Europe under President Biden. The problem is not wokeism to such an extreme that they got people's genitalia hanging out on the Olympics broadcast to little kids around the world. No, those aren't the problems. The problem was their candidate was too white. Their candidate was too male. Their candidate was from the Midwest. Their candidate was too old. They're really going to run on an identity politics campaign. They really think identity politics solves all their problems, that the working class voters just didn't relate. They'll relate to the African, Jamaican, Indian daughter of slave owners grew up in Canada, weird, cackling Kamala laughter, that they'll relate to her because she checks the box in the meme video that's going around that Elon Musk retweeted. Vote for me because I'm a woman. Vote for me because I'm black. Vote for me because I'm biracial. Vote for me because I'm the daughter of immigrants. Vote for me because of my identity. They think that's what's going to fly in urban, working class, rural, suburban, Midwest America. That's what's going to fly with Mexican American voters and working class voters in Nevada and Arizona. They're completely delusional. She's going to get crushed. It is not going to get close. They're not going to get anywhere near the margin of fraud.
The problem is I was listening to Ben Carson on Tucker Carlson as I'm jogging, and the problem is, like, I came to this sort of revelation yesterday. People are idiots, and they're not voting for a person. They're not voting for policy. They're voting for a package. They're voting for a brand, and the media, their ability overnight, literally to pull a 1984. Kamala Harris is an idiot. Kamala Harris is the most liberal senator. Kamala Harris, they talked about her having slept her way to the top as well. Overnight, like, they got the new script in Orwell's 1984. She's now the new savior, and they're so effective at doing it. There's going to be people out there who don't know that she bailed people, that she was.
But the problem is who their voters are. And there's the reason why voters are not voting for Biden is because the economy stinks. because immigration is bad, because there's war abroad, because they don't like all the insanity of the wokeism being so extreme. That's why. She doesn't cure those problems. She makes them worse. She's more of a war whore. She's more of a wokist. She's more of a pro open borders. She's worse in favoring big tech and Wall Street over ordinary people in the real economy. In fact, Peter Thiel predicted this. He said, watch, the Democratic Party will nominate somebody from California because they think that's their stellar example of what the whole country wants. And they're going to find out the whole country doesn't want California. I mean, that's so the media thinks they can just respin it, re-narrate it, put it out there. It's not going to work. Like, you look at the state surveys, other surveys, even with this bombardment of favorable coverage, she's barely moved the needle. She should be up by 5 or 6 points right now. You've got 2 weeks of ridiculous positive coverage, and you're still behind. I mean, that's a disaster. I mean, they need to win. Then it's even worse. You dig into the numbers. It's even worse amongst working class voters that are going to decide the election, whether you're talking about Hispanics, who she's never played well with in Arizona and Nevada, in Texas and Florida, or you're talking about working class black men, who she's also never played well with in Georgia and North Carolina.
Oh, she's played well with them, Robert. But
not working class black voters. She goes up that scale. There's a sugar before that daddy. So and then she really plays badly in the working class North. I mean, it told me that Obama didn't even realize. Now, he didn't want her. He wanted somebody else. And she weaseled, and Willie Brown outmaneuvered Barack Obama. Not the first time, by the way. That guy is exceptional when it comes to political skill. Because if people don't know it, Willie Brown is her patron and can't wait for her to be in the White House. That he would consider that his ultimate achievement, because nobody's going to think. It was like the reason why Roger Ailes loved promoting Sean Hannity. He was like, everybody knows that idiot couldn't make it on his own. They know that Hannity is there because Roger Ailes, made him. That's what makes Kamala perfect for Willie Brown. Everybody's going to know she would have never made it there on her own. So but Willie Brown outmaneuvered Barack Hussein Obama, who wanted somebody else, because he's obsessed with he hates it that Trump keeps replacing him. It makes him look bad in his view that Trump is his natural successor. But they're going to legally fund the campaign. They're going to media manipulate like mad. They're going. The propaganda is going to be off the charts in the month of August. They'll do some bogus polls. They're already doing it.
Yeah,
they're putting out
crazy.
Polls where all of a sudden the electorate is now +8 Democratic, which is they're back to doing some of their worst polling from 2016 and 2020. Problem is, it's not going to change the minds of working class people in Middle America, and then that's why I hope they buy their own BS, because then we won't face another assassination attempt. We won't face another bad crisis between now and election day. I hope they believe their own nonsense that she's going to win on election day when those voters go in the voting booth, because then she'll get crushed as she deserves to.
Let me play. I'm not going to play the whole thing, just a few seconds of this.
I, Kamala Harris, am your Democrat candidate for president because Joe Biden finally exposed his senility of debate. Thanks, Joe. I was selected because I am the ultimate diversity hire. I'm both a woman and a person of color. So if you criticize anything I say, you're both sexist and racist.
I mean, it's so amazing how perfect the inflection is. Elon Musk tweets this, and there were some people, Robert, suggesting that Elon was breaking the law by putting up deceptive messaging. And I I had to double check and just say, okay, no, political parody is still legal, even if you don't get the joke. But then I remembered Ricky Vaughn, Douglas Mackey. I'm like, oh yeah, but if someone thinks that Elon is trying to faithfully depict her policy, they'll go after Elon. Do you think he has created any exposure, however absurd it would have to be, by sharing that?
No, the bigger exposure is what Seymour Hersh is reporting, which is that Barack Obama told Joe Biden that if he didn't step down, Kamala Harris had the votes to invoke the 25th Amendment to forcibly try to remove him from the presidency. Now, by the way, I still think that was a bluff. I don't believe the Democratic Party would have embarrassed themselves so bad as to try to invoke the 25th Amendment, and Biden had defenses against that 25th Amendment. But as Brett Weinstein and others have pointed out, this raises serious questions about whether Kamala Harris basically staged an illegal coup to steal the nomination in an undemocratic party. Well, it should be called the undemocratic party in an undemocratic manner. Or as they say at Idiocracy when they're describing the UN, and different things like that. I mean, we're witnessing in live time, but it does raise certain questions. I mean, if the Republicans had some courage, which they usually don't, they would seek a potential impeachment of Kamala Harris, both for her open borders complicity and for whether or not she staged an illegal coup. I mean, did she falsely threaten? I mean, if you believe that Joe Biden is incompetent, incapable of discharging his presidential duties, then your job is to assert the 25th Amendment. You can't falsely assert it and say, hey, as long as you step down, I won't assert it. That means you don't sincerely believe that he is, in fact, incapable of serving the job, and you're solely using it in an extortionate way. And that's what it looks like Kamala Harris and Barack Obama were both guilty of. I mean, they're both guilty of criminal activity. Now, Barack obviously didn't anticipate that Willie Brown would outmaneuver him in wrapping up the nomination for Kamala Harris so fast. He imagined and fancied that he had more control of the Democratic Party than he really did. But that raises much more important consequential legal questions than sharing parody videos that are very accurate parody videos on X.
Now, speaking of money, Robert, and speaking of potential tax issues, second sponsor of the night, people, Tax Network USA. Do you owe back taxes? Pandemic relief is now over, along with hiring thousands of new agents and the field officers. The IRS has kicked off 2024 by sending over 5 million pay-up letters to those who have unfiled tax returns or balances owed. Don't waive your rights and speak with them on your own. They are not your friends. They're like the police. Good at a distance. Don't talk to them without representation. Tax Network USA, a trusted tax relief firm, has saved over $1 billion in back taxes for their clients, and they can help you secure the best deal possible, whether you owe $10,000 or $10 million. And if you owe $10 million, what the hell have you been doing? But whether you owe $10,000 or $10 million, they can help you, whether it's business or personal taxes. Even if you have the means to pay or you are on a fixed income, they can help finally resolve your tax burdens once and for all. Call 1-800-245-6000. Now that I see it, it's 245-6000 for a private free consultation, or visit tnusa.com/Viva, TN Tango November USA, like the country.com/Viva, 1-800-245-6000. The links to both of our wonderful sponsors are in the description. Robert, what time is it here? Do we let's get off. We've done everything. We've done good on YouTube. We're gonna go now, move the party over to Rumble and VivaBarnesLaw.locals.com. Did you watch it?
I think the editor's recommendation for Rumble is the 7-minute episode.
Oh, God. Well, they'll fix the glitch. I don't know what the glitch was, but I've notified the team. What I was going to say was this. You watched Idiocracy last night, right? In VivaBarnesLaw.locals.com.
Yeah, it was our Saturday movie night. Was Idiocracy? It was the choice of the board at VivaBarnesLaw.locals.com. It was really. I mean, I was like watching the current Democratic Party in power. I mean, the similar kind of logic, similar kind of social and moral intelligence at the top. So we'll see what it all folds of it. But what's fascinating, we could probably cover this one on YouTube, and then before we shift over to Rumble, I was curious what Hollywood's excuse was going to be legally for their overt, open discrimination based on political beliefs against actors, actresses, screenwriters, and others. And what I didn't realize is that they thought they were like big tech in the northern part of California, that they could say they had a First Amendment right in the name of their expressive advocacy through their films to require all of their employees to adopt their politics. They actually asserted in Gina Carano's case that defense. And had they prevailed, that would have been very damaging, because it would have allowed the biggest influencer on people's minds around the world, which is still Hollywood, good, bad, or otherwise, still is, to force their actors, coerce their actors and actresses, screenwriters and employees, all the way down to janitor, that unless you imitate the party platform, unless you repeat it on a regular basis, then we will use our positions of power in the name of the First Amendment to take away your First Amendment rights and require you to suppress. It's like the perversion of democracy. The party that says democracy is on the ballot is busy picking a presidential candidate who no one's ever voted for. Never at all.
She didn't file her papers. Just, we might be presuming a little bit of knowledge for everyone watching, or for some people watching. Gina Carano, Disney star, The DeLorean, which I've never watched.
The Mandalorian, yeah.
The Mandalorian, sorry, not The DeLorean. I was watching Back to the Future. So she put up that now infamous Instagram post, which was widely misrepresented. The post was to the effect that, at first the Nazis, to get people to demonize their neighbors, to justify atrocities to their neighbors, vilified them and made neighbors fight against neighbors. She did not say in that post that Republicans are the modern day Jews in a modern day Nazi Germany. It was more a government getting neighbors to fight among each other as to how you got to Nazi Germany. Could have applied to anybody, the Democrats, Republican equally. She gets, basically fired, canceled. And I don't know, did they like invoke a morality clause? It's not the same thing as Roseanne Barr's allegedly racist joke, whatever, where she got canceled, presumably on the basis of a morality clause. But they terminate Gina Carano for it's not just an innocuous post, or I should say an insightful post. I think Susan Sarandon had some overt comparisons to Nazis and whatever, but they fired her and she sued. Now, this isn't a victory in the sense that she has achieved anything other than she will get her day in court. They made a motion to dismiss, and they said, we're all exercising our First Amendment rights here. We get to fire people who we don't agree with, even if they don't violate allegedly any contractual obligation. So she'll get her day in court, and they fail. That's the backdrop. So Robert, so they argue we get to exercise our First Amendment rights by firing employees or terminating with employees with whom we disagree politically, basically.
Yeah, I mean, it goes even further than that. I mean, what happened was this was, the 2019-2020. Gina Carano's already been a successful actress, but becomes one of the most popular actresses on the show Mandalorian, which was the only show that was doing any good by Disney's recreation of Star Wars, which they've mostly butchered and destroyed in the name of woke ideology. So, but this was when you had to pronounce your pronouns. And they were various people were demanding at Disney that she join the pronoun police, that she needed to say she was she, her, hers, and that if she didn't, that was deeply disturbing to them. They were even mandating that she go to the equivalent of re-education camps to explain to her why she needed to be saying she, her, and hers, why she needed to be celebrating the BLM riots taking place across the country. Because she didn't do that, but she did go along with other things. I mean, she was willing to sit down and talk to people and discuss it and so on and so forth. And then finally she's like, okay, I'll do a droid pronoun thing. That enraged them even further. And so they were looking for a pretext to fire her, terminate her, especially because they got in trouble with their wokeism was killing the brand, and their involvement with China was highly controversial. So in order to distract from that, they decide, hey, let's just make an example out of Gina Carano. And it's an example we want to set for all of Hollywood, that we have the right to dictate. You have to believe what we say you believe, not just part of what content we create and put out there, but you have to, when you're off screen, when you're off the job, you have to be endorsing our ideas. You have to be celebrating wokeism. And we will use the power of employment, the power of access to your profession and occupation as the condition to string you along in that direction. And when they got rid of her, they not only got rid of her, they made a big public deal about it, lied about her in such a way that her agent dropped her, her lawyer dropped her. She couldn't get any. She was going to start making millions of dollars a year. It's not making anything. And it was all because, partially it was because Disney's problems and they just needed a distraction in the news cycle, but it was because Hollywood has chosen to make wokeism a mandatory requirement. It's the same thing that's happening to employees all across the country, like the Red Hat lawsuit that I have. They're requiring everybody on the job and off the job celebrate their ideology. And if you don't, you're going to be sent to re-education camp. And so the defense, so she brought suit because in California, like some other jurisdictions, it is illegal for an employer to discriminate based on your political beliefs. They cannot use the power of employment to coerce you to doing certain things. This goes back to the old school liberal, classical liberal version of California.
Is that under the Unruh Act, Robert?
Yes. And there's multiple, it applies in multiple contexts. And they also harassed her, and you could argue there was gender discrimination because they treated her very differently than Pascal, the lead actor also in Mandalorian, who said much more crazier things politically. I mean, the guy's kind of wacky. But their excuse was that they had a First Amendment right, that because they're in the Hollywood business, because they make TV shows, because they make films, they can require anybody that works with them or for them to toe the ideological line, or they can weaponize all of their economic power to crush them, and that no other laws that prohibit discrimination can possibly apply to them. They were saying they had a First Amendment right to be totalitarians, First Amendment right to be 1984 advocates. And that, I mean, I've always been curious how they thought they'd get away with this legally, but it was still a bit shocking that they think they have the equal power to what big tech has, where they can play editor when they want to and then play non-editor when they want to and be immune either way. That's Section 230. Hollywood doesn't have a Section 230. So they pretended the First Amendment embodied that. And the reason why Gina Carano had competent, capable counsel, given that they tried to deny her any monetary access in anywhere in Hollywood the blacklisting, the real blacklisting. I mean, people think that the communists were blacklisted. Nothing like the way people like Gina Carano have been blacklisted. Go back and look. A lot of those commie writers could fake a name and get a job. And a lot of other commies got jobs without a problem. Gina Carano, they completely blacklisted because she wouldn't toe the line. And they wanted to make an example. Here's a popular actress on a TV show that made that show successful and will cancel TV shows rather than allow someone to not toe the line. Because these are about ideological indoctrinators. They're not about making people money. They lie to their shareholders on a regular basis. They should be sued into oblivion for their consumer and fraud on the markets over the last decade. But what they're really into, what they're really about, is ideological indoctrination. You can't watch that Olympics presentation and come to any other conclusion. That isn't about entertainment. That isn't about art. That's about indoctrination.
Well, but even if it were about art, I'm not watching the Olympics for that type of art. Maybe like spiritual art or unifying art. I'm not watching it for. I can't even think of a controversial artist type of art.
Mapplethorpe.
Is he the guy that stuck the American flag up his butt?
He's the guy that put a Jesus in his own urine.
Yeah, and I think he actually
that was art. That's not art. That might be expression, but it's not art. Let's not defame the aesthetic of art by pretending Mapplethorpe is in it. Now, he might be in it from a constitutional protection category, but not from an aesthetic value category. But the federal court came in and went through this whole history and said, what you're claiming is that you have a First Amendment right to ignore the employment discrimination laws of California. What you're claiming is that your First Amendment rights trump the First Amendment rights of all your employees, of everybody who works for you. Because this wasn't about, and they were using lawsuits where the film itself required the discriminatory judgment. In other words, the film itself or the show itself required to be a woman or a man or a black person or a white person or Mexican person or whatever, or have a certain ideological inclination, etc. Like, that isn't what this is about. You're demanding everybody, you're claiming something extraordinary, that you have the First Amendment power to use your economic power to indoctrinate the world and use your economic power over your employees to force them to be advocates of this ideology. And that's precisely what California law has never allowed and has always prohibited. And the First Amendment has never protected. First Amendment has never gone that far. The First Amendment allows your expressive advocacy. It does not allow your employment discrimination. and prejudice. And so it was a massive win for Gina Carano. They did, the court completely denied every aspect of Disney's motion to dismiss, which means they're marching forward to discovery, which I'm sure is going to be very, very interesting. And more importantly, it means the entire legal predicate that Hollywood had been assuming gave them the green light to behave like big tech towards its own screenwriters and actors and actresses and coerce them into ideological indoctrination. That legal template is gone. And everybody who's been discriminated against for political reasons, and there have been many, many, many in Hollywood. Remember, all these companies are based in California, in one way, shape, or form. You have a right to sue them now in California. You got the legal precedent to do so, thanks to Gina Carano, thanks to Elon Musk, who funded her lawsuit. So it's a big, big win for free speech, freedom of thought, freedom of ideas in America, and a big win against the idolaters and the indoctrinators at Disney World.
Robert, I saw something in the chat here. I'm going to get to this in a second. Your locals' timer is wrong. This is from the old stream. Hey, you know what I hate? The sound of mouth noises. Here, let me show you. I really, really hate it. You're still using dial-up in Canada, David? Yeah, it's very bad. The Engaged View says, the fact that the judge wasn't fleeing from the stage amid a hail of D batteries says a lot about the audience's understanding of the rule of law, separation of powers. Viva, get Dr. Robert Epstein. I'm in talks with him. Not like there's no reluctance. It will happen, but my goodness, I need to get back to better internet connection. But hold on. Apparently, I want to bring up the other before we head on over to, what is this? The quartering, $300. Jeremy, thank you very much. What is this about? Because my push to 250,000 followers on Rumble is so important, I'm going hard. Love you two boys. Let them know to follow me. Live every day at 1 Eastern was great meeting in... That is Milwaukee, I imagine, the international code. I got to pass. Dude, Jeremy from the quartering. I think you're at 250,000, man. That's a lot of... You're right there. Okay. Jeremy from the quartering.
He's got 1 million plus on YouTube, of course, but he's really trying to boost the Rumble channel. Does a lot of interviews, has Sticks and Hammer and other people on. I've been on. I think you've been on. That, does a daily show, does multiple updates. So that's easy to remember. The quartering. I forgot. I was going to ask him where he came up with that name. Why the quartering? Yeah, cool guy. Great, a lot of fun to hang out with him. A hardworking guy.
He's amazing. Town. Very tall as well. I almost panicked because I just got the low battery, which meant that my plug had unplugged. Go follow the quartering. Trude says, listen, they will steal it. It's up to us how we react this time. Make it unstealable. Tommy Robinson, did you hear this, Robert? Was arrested under the Terrorism Act of 2000 whatever in the UK. 50,000 people protest, no violence, arrested yet again. I mean, people are going to say, like, he thought Canada was bad, and everyone's like, dude, the UK is just as bad. Free Tommy Robinson, arrested under the terrorism laws. We're going to get there in this stream. E. Taylor says, I identify as transparent. My pronouns are who and where. Ray Price, I have a unique on the student loan forgiveness debacle that Trump would support. How do I get in touch with him or his campaign? Dude, Ray Price, tweet it, tag people, and if it's resonating, it'll get there. Do you think the bogus donations to ActBlue, James O'Keefe Exposed, which went to the Biden campaign, would be refunded to the donors that didn't realize they donated it in the FEC? Dude, I saw this stuff. Like, it's like micro donations in people's names who don't know. And they're like, okay, fine, go reimburse them $20. It's like credit card surcharges. You gotta get people who are to do it. And it's a big headache. Matt G. Hammond, can we call her from here on Kamala? Oh, not bad. Dude, says Mr. Purpose. Viva, your rant today was fire. Everyone should watch it. Restarted my lefty hate jet engine. I was sweating so hard after that stream because it was in that video was in the car and it was hot. But Biden got 81 million votes. Appreciate the Toji. Would appreciate you posting more often on Truth Social. Barnes, Truth Social would love to have you. Let's support free speech. Matt Reese, ActBlue is laundering money through donors who can't legally donate using real people who don't know what's happening. Absolutely. All right, we're gonna skip these and get to these in a bit. The quartering name comes from his channel origins, mostly playing claw prize games. Interesting. All right, with that said, I'm going to get to some of the vivabarneslaw.locals.com chat tips in the other side of the stream, ending on YouTube. I'll post, I don't know how long it's going to take to upload this to the internet, so I might have to wait for a hotel tomorrow. It'll be on podcast and the other channel tomorrow. So ending on YouTube right now, come over to Rumble or vivabarneslaw.locals.com. And do we leave it on Twitter? We'll leave it on Twitter.
Yeah,
we'll leave it on Twitter for a little bit. Okay, Robert,
I'm just waiting for the person that's behind interrupting your internet service to pop up in the windows behind and see a little Justin Trudeau. You know, the
that would be fun. Let me see if I can go find someone to put on a Trudeau mask.
Yeah.
Okay, so we got Gina Carano, the good news.
Yes.
I would say Engoron was there. I forget. Well, let's get to. I forget what the segue was to Engoron, but the New York nipple judge Engoron, the chat there that said, people should be throwing batteries at that judge. Don't any violence, none whatsoever. Don't even throw gravel at Justin Trudeau because it allows the victimizers to pretend to be the victims. Engoron, who is, I won't go. I've talked about it at length, but bottom line, he made the news recently in that Trump case where some idiot lawyer, real estate lawyer, goes on an interview the day Trump was found liable, or he was ordered to pay that outstanding sum of money in the fraud case that had no victim, no nothing. I'm not going into it because everybody knows about that case. So this guy gives an interview and says, "Yeah, I ran into Judge Engoron." He's giving the interview the day of the ruling. He says, "I ran into Engoron weeks ago in court. Why is Engoron walking through the court? Who knows? I talked to him. I really wanted to make sure he got it right. So I talked the law, yada, yada, told him what he had to do in his ruling. And then today he came down with the ruling. He got it right. Yep, bada bing, bada boom, amazing judge." Trump made a motion for recusal. And as we've talked about at length, the idiocy of these motions for recusal, they're presented in front of and adjudicated by the judge whose recusal is being sought. Engoron issued his ruling today, and he goes through a 12-page ruling. They haven't met the threshold. I'm capable of their arguments are not persuasive. I'm capable of adjudicating impartially. This 90-second unsolicited meeting where this guy imparted on me case law with which I was already well familiar, had no impact, no nothing. And I'm not recusing myself, and I'm not granting a hearing before a separate judge to determine whether or not there should be recusal. Robert, the corruption has investigated itself and found no wrongdoing. What's your take on this?
Well, I think it reveals the need. We have 3 examples of judicial recusal in the last several weeks. So we have the Judge Engoron in New York. We have what's pending currently before the Supreme Court of the United States, where you've got judges who sat on cases as government lawyers, become judges, and then they adjudicate the cases they were government lawyers in, which is supposed to be prohibited. In addition, the federal standard, which is really, while it's statutory, it's really constitutionally rooted, is that you're entitled to not only an impartial jurist, but the appearance of an impartial jurist. And that so the pending Supreme Court petition is that there's actually federal courts that are confused on this. They're not sure if that's what it really means, because that's how desperate they are to allow corrupt judges to sit on proceedings. It's an embarrassment. The courts have proven themselves incapable of disciplining themselves. It's a recurrent problem that likely requires legislative reform. So that takes us to the third example of recusal, the Georgia Young Thug trial. The good thing they do in Georgia, like they do in some states, is they require that the recusal motion be heard by a judge different than the judge whose recusal is being sought. In addition, they require a substitution of the judge over the pending proceeding while the recusal motion is being sought. So that is at the minimal level of remedy that should be sought. And my other opinion is, if we need to remove, judicial immunity from damages suits in many of these cases, that would discipline judges if they know there's even a risk that they be sued based on them having prejudice involved in a case they should not have been presiding over. So I think Engoron is one more example of how we need institutional reform when it comes to both the state and federal judicial branch.
It is it's very frustrating. I don't know what they're going to appeal that decision. This is the one where the Engoron issued the $454 million order and then allowed him to post bond for $100 and some odd million, and then Letitia James actually had the balls to try to attack the bond company, the Surtee company. And this is Judge Engoron, who we saw in the intro of this show, talking about his tools to follow the law or make the law in this case. All right, on to what next, Robert?
Speaking of some good cases, we've got a First Amendment case that's going to go up to the Supreme Court. Petition for cert's already been filed, and hopefully the Supreme Court takes it. This stems from a 2000 case where the court butchered First Amendment law because they wanted to protect abortion. And what they did is all these laws were being passed saying you couldn't be near an abortion clinic, you couldn't speak near an abortion clinic, and they described it as all healthcare facilities. But basically, you lost your speech rights if you were within a certain proximal distance of a abortion clinic or health facility, which has never made sense. This was applied, by the way, to hurt people trying to protest related to COVID policy. So Carbondale, Illinois has passed one of these laws based on the one that the Supreme Court approved in Hill versus Colorado back in 2000. And it's up to the Supreme Court now, and they're pointing out this law never made sense. That every justice has admitted at some other point that decision never made sense. You don't lose your First Amendment rights because you're within a certain proximal distance of a healthcare facility. Indeed, what they said in that decision was insane. They said you had a privacy right not to listen to what you didn't want to listen to. And it's like, what? You've never had a First Amendment right to shut up other people because you don't want to hear what they have to say in a public setting. That's directly contra the whole point of the First Amendment. So hopefully the Supreme Court takes that case, eviscerates that old bad doctrine, reinstates and reinvigorates the First Amendment, particularly while abortion is a hot topic in the state level of government post Dobbs. People should be allowed to discuss it, but also any other health issue, vaccine issues, COVID issues, ivermectin issues, whatever it may be. People need to have full free speech, especially around healthcare facilities.
They did this in Canada too, with protesting around hospitals, but only as relates to COVID issues. Obviously not as relates to labor issues, because then you piss off the nurses and the healthcare workers who want to be able to protest near the hospitals. They did it about protesting COVID issues near schools, but sure as heck not going to touch teachers who want to protest. But Robert, let me bring this up. The woman who was convicted, look at this. I love this. Reuters fact check. Paulette Harlow convicted for blocking abortion clinic, not praying. And then we get to this. The anti-abortion campaigner Paulette Harlow was convicted for blocking access to an abortion clinic. I mean, this is the one that's making the rounds now, the news now. And it's like, unless I know the details of the
you dig specific in, and usually what they're doing is praying. So yeah, because every form of speech has been allowed to be criminalized. Now, at least the Supreme Court struck down years ago the attempt to prohibit people from even being within 35 feet of a hospital unless they're going into the hospital and so forth. They recognize that was insane, but this old doctrine is also insane. Should be scrapped. It was brought by the part of the Supreme Court that didn't really care about the First Amendment, and they need to reinstate and reinvigorate the First Amendment as the COVID policy protest proved the necessity of. Oh, you're on mute.
She was convicted to 2 years in prison for allegedly blocking. I think there's a.
Can you imagine that? I mean, there's people that commit serious crimes that walk, and somebody prays in front of an abortion clinic and they get 2 years. It's been an outrage. The abuse of these laws proves the necessity of this First Amendment revision and reinvigoration. And that's what Kamala Harris is going to run on, right? She's going to run on abortion. They're all excited. Can't wait to run on abortion. That locking up grandmas. That's Kamala Harris. When she wasn't busy locking up kids over pot, when she wasn't busy locking up people that she knew were innocent, but wanted to keep them in labor camps for the state of California, she's busy locking up grandmas for unauthorized visits to the Capitol or for praying outside abortion clinics. They think this lady is going to win middle America. Good luck.
It's an amazing thing. Also, I've been talking to Dexter Taylor, who's serving in the Coxsackie Correctional Facility in New York. They use prison workers for slave labor. Like it's an atrocious thing that most people don't fully care about, because the inclination to think, well, FAFO, fuck around, find out, and if you commit a crime, go to jail and stitch together prison clothes that a company's going to sell for profit. Okay, sorry.
Well, that's a
all
good
right.
transition to our prisoner rights case. So we got a good case out of the Fourth Circuit because what's happened is if you're in a federal prison, as you know, Peter Navarro, Steve Bannon, Owen Schroyer have experienced, you don't have the same rights and remedies that you do if you're in a state prison. If you're in a local jail or a state prison, the federal civil rights laws allow you to seek relief and remedy. I've sued a lot of prisons and jails over the years when they violate your rights. However, what happens when it's the federal side? Thankfully, sadly, thanks to our conservative jurist in particular, they have eviscerated the ability to sue when the government does bad. And this includes in this context. It's called the Bivens context. So Bivens says that if they violate your constitutional rights, sometimes you can sue in their individual capacity. So if they violate your Fourth Amendment rights, you can sue, depending on which Fourth Amendment rights they violated and how they did so. They violate your equal protection rights, sometimes you can sue, depending again on who did it and how they did it. And if they violate your Eighth Amendment rights to not be denied medical treatment while you're in state custody, then you can sue, again, depending on the circumstances. But what came up in the Fourth Circuit is these cops, these custodial guards, took this inmate, beat the daylights out of him, threw him in, set the isolation, which they have, separate, they call it segregated housing, as Owen Schroyer got tossed into. I believe Navarro might have got tossed into. I mean, just they abuse this all the time because they're isolated from any remedy, and then denied him his internal administrative remedies, which they do often, and took away his legal documents and access to legal counsel. So he files suit saying, is there no remedy for this kind of violation? Can I just be beaten and humiliated and have all my rights taken away because I'm in federal custody? And fortunately, the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals said no. If they deny you, they both violate your rights and then deny you your remedy for the violation of those rights under their internal administrative protocols, then we're going to say you have a Bivens claim cause of action. And that's hopeful because it's been a problem on the federal inmate side. What we need is legislative reform and remedy so that people can hold federal wardens as accountable as we currently hold state wardens.
Robert, I understand the difference, that it's worse at the federal level than the state level, but I don't understand exactly why.
Oh, because there's federal law, 42 USC 1983, in the 14th Amendment that says the states can't do certain things and that there's a right to sue whenever somebody violates your rights at the state level. You can get attorney's fees, you can get damages, etc. However, there's no such, and it eviscerates sovereign immunity of any of the individuals. They have qualified immunity, but not sovereign immunity. On the federal level, there's no such law. There's no civil rights laws. So they're generally considered immune from suit. Sovereign immunity is a made-up doctrine. Sovereign immunity comes from the idea that the king is ordained by God and thus can do no wrong. Like the Pope can do no wrong because he's ordained by God. This has no business in American society. Federal and state judges made it up to cover for their politician pals in positions of power. That's what they did. But while this exists, at least the 1983 laws say that if the person is a state level actor, a local government or state government level actor, then you have the right to sue for remedy. But there's no such law for when it's the federal government that screws you.
Robert, hold on. Before we get further here, I want to do one thing because I see a red thing up in the chat here. Harry Toad 2, I love calling every COVID-19 vaccinated person who gets COVID an anti-vaxxer when they say it's COVID. And then we got King of Biltong in the house who says, good afternoon from Anton's Meat and Eat. Free shipping on your Biltong using code VIVA on www.biltongusa.com, AntonUSA.com. Biltong is not taxed. Boycott government, buy more Biltong. It's delicious of the South African style, so wet and easier to chew and delicious compared to that nasty, dried, jaw-crushing beef jerky. And then Robert, over in our Viva Barnes Law, I'll just get one here. Kotek's party, I recently saw a story. This is from M. Gred. Governor of Oregon, Tina Kotek, and I had to chuckle remembering that a couple of decades ago, the dominant political party in Spain took out a full-page ad in El País, where they named another party the Kotex Party because they wanted to be in the best place at the worst time. Then Michael Yon explained the tampon Didarium seems we all have been receiving something other than a tampon somewhere else. Okay, that's funny. We'll get to a lot of the locals tips in a bit. All right, Robert, is there another white pill decision of the evening?
Well, it is food related, but it's not a white pill.
The chicken bone.
Yeah, did you read that case?
Yeah, well, but look, I'm torn in terms of I don't care what it says. I'm not swallowing whole things. I don't know how big the bone was. Like these are things where, like, I want to see the bone. Is it like an actual bone, or just a small shrapnel of a bone? Dude gets boneless chicken wings, eats them. There's a bone in one. It gets lodged in there, and what happens after that?
Yeah, so I mean, imagine you go to a restaurant and you order the boneless wings, and you end up with a big bone in your throat and a bunch of health problems. So he naturally sued. But according to a majority of the Ohio Supreme Court, he should have known better. That according to them, when you buy boneless wings, you're not intending to buy boneless wings. In fact, it's so obvious, it's a matter of law. They wouldn't let the jury determine it. As a matter of law in the state of Ohio, according to the Ohio Supreme Court, when you go buy boneless wings, it can never mean boneless wings. And no one could possibly think it means boneless wings, even though it says boneless wings. It's one of the more ludicrous decisions. It reflects the judicial bias against jury trials. They don't want a jury to determine the case. Why? Because they know what a jury would determine. A jury would be like, the dude went in there and he ordered boneless wings and he got a big bone in his throat. Somebody screwed up because the wings are supposed to be boneless. They actually, this is my favorite part. They said boneless wings just refers to a cooking style. Really? They said that was so axiomatic. Everybody in the whole world knew it, that no one could even challenge or question it. I was like, I didn't know boneless wings was a cooking style. I thought it meant boneless wings. What did you know that boneless wings doesn't mean boneless?
I don't look. Not that I'm saying I would be inclined to think that you might expect to see a bone every now and again. I just would assume that you're. I doubt the guy was swallowing it without chewing it just because he thought it was boneless. It's like if you get fish, it says boneless fish.
Pieces. He went and cut it in one little piece, then ate it, and it was like almost, and he was like, "What the heck?" But now he's not even allowed to get to the jury in Ohio because boneless wings doesn't. Everybody knows that doesn't mean boneless, according to the great wisdom of the Ohio Supreme Court.
All right. What next, Robert? I'm going to go pull up the list of the backdrop here, but the internet is so flipping slow.
Yeah, we got a good Second Amendment ruling out of the Fort Worth Division of the Northern District of Texas, United States District Court. There's another, for those folks that follow this in the gun world. And by the way, Chris Martinson, Peak Prosperity, who you interviewed, great guy, very sharp guy. There's some people out there that are new to him. And so they have this, he's very idiosyncratic and he's a data guy. So people sometimes get confused about him. And he has very unique opinions. So they may disagree with some opinion he has and assume that extends to other things. I know Martinson, he's a great guy. He was trying to raise money very early on to help the vaccine injured and help people that were discriminated against the vaccine mandate context, was great at breaking down data concerning the COVID issues very early on. He's just he's your classic data nerd. But he's a huge gun nerd as well. That's why he's going to continue to have really good information, insight, and intel on the Trump assassination attempt. So I know like Hunley and some other people didn't quite know who he was and had some skepticism. He's a great guy, legit guy.
Well, he espouses, or he's entertaining the idea of multiple shooters, and I can.
Yeah, and I think there's more and more evidence of it. And there's other people that are big gun people saying the same thing. So speaking of who you cannot trust when it comes to guns, that would be the alcohol, tobacco, and firearms group that supposedly had some people stationed oddly at the Trump assassination attempt. So but the ATF under Biden for quite a while, and then some of this started actually, unfortunately, under Trump's administration in the panic response to the Vegas shooting. Which we still haven't got an answer from the FBI. They just can't figure out what the heck happened fully. Well, what that dude's motive was. They'll get right around to it now that our dear sheriff is governor here in Nevada. I'm sure. I'm sure there was no correlation between those two things. Between not solving the Vegas shooting and as sheriff and getting himself elected governor for all the big casinos here in town. But the ATF decided they were going to redefine what the word machine gun means. So even though Congress since 1934 has defined machine gun in a very specific way, the ATF decided, no, that really isn't applicable. We're going to define anything that can shoot, more than twice in a certain way. We're going to describe that as a machine gun, even though that has never been statutorily or common sense what a machine gun is. So they tried to call bump stock a machine gun. That, of course, was overturned by the Supreme Court of the United States. This other one, and I don't confess to know anywhere near as much about guns as many of our audience does. I just like to shoot them, but I don't know not much about them. I got friends. I got plenty of them, including a good buddy down in Austin, Texas. But they got something called a forced reset trigger, and they were trying to call this forced reset trigger. They said that made the gun a machine gun. And they were trying to put people in prison for simply having one of these, even though they were legal up until just 2 years ago. Luckily, the federal court said, under the same legal doctrine as the Supreme Court announced in the bump stock decision case, that a machine gun is specifically statutorily defined. You can't go replacing the legislature like the ATF tried to do, or replace us judges anymore in the post-Chevron doctrine being dead cases. And said, it's about one trigger being able to pull an automatic. If it's not, these other bump stocks don't make it a machine gun. A forced reset trigger doesn't make it a machine gun. What they're doing is illegal and enjoined all of the ATF from going forward. Big win for the Second Amendment.
And I don't know. I hope when you glitch for me, I don't think you glitch for everybody else. So I missed some of the stuff, but we covered the machine gun bump stock reversal, where they said, the argument was that because of how the bump stock works, it bumps back and you could sort of move the gun around the trigger as opposed to the trigger through the handle. They said, well, it can fire too many times a second, therefore that becomes a machine gun. And the court said, no, the criteria was not fires per second, because that would have been an easier threshold to establish than what it was one trigger actioning more than one round. So,
yep.
All right, at least some consistency.
And unless both those things are not there, things that make your gun more fun don't make it a machine gun. That's what the courts are consistently ruling.
Robert, we haven't actually talked about this. Can you believe that the Democrats in the congressional hearings last week over the assassination attempt were trying to turn it into an AR-15 gun debate?
Of course they were. Though I do appreciate AOC for making clear that the AR-15 is a very commonly owned gun, because that is currently the standard for protecting it under the Second Amendment. Not that she would necessarily know that, but we appreciate her documenting that on the record.
Well, I also appreciate her highlighting the fact that their security perimeter had a nice little carve out of the area that was 140 yards away. So their security perimeter was deficient. Oy, all right. What up now?
We've got a couple of cases left. We got probably we had some defamation cases that are interesting, juror bias cases. The U.S. finally an answer on what happened with the USS John McCain. Not the man, the ship. The terror watch list was one of our more interested in cases, and then the top vote getter at vivabarneslaw.locals.com. The initiative case and ballot access cases.
Okay, Robert, give me a few minutes to do some of the tipped questions in vivabarneslaw.locals.com. Then we want to do the terrorist one, because I think that might be particularly relevant at this point in time. Schnookums, $5, says the ActBlue shenanigans on donation laundering is not totally new. Why no FEC or congressional inquiry? That's a question I had, Robert, because O'Keefe had done I just retweeted his current one, but he did something on this years ago, and nothing. The crickets, they don't care about it.
Well, the Republicans in the House are weak, so that would be the only body that would want to be involved.
All right, we got Will Rogers, who says the money laundering that Barnes is referring to was named Smurfing and is a massive identity theft. See Peter Berniger on X Telegram. I'm gonna bring that up in a second. Yes, that's
correct. Actually. It is called Smurfing.
Okay, good. We got I have Democrat friends concerned about Trump's affiliation with Project 2025. What do I tell them? This is from Ganthet.
The Trump, Trump is Project 2025 is a group of conservative think tanks ideas for the Trump administration. Trump has not signed off on any of them as yet. Some of their ideas are good. Some of their ideas I'm less of a fan of. But the ideas that are good are taking apart the administrative state. That's what's got the media climbing the walls. Anybody that thinks that the Democrats putting Project 2025 and some of that's going to cause people to vote against Trump, it just shows Democrats live in their own little world. That they read their own little publications and blogs, and they created so many safe spaces that they no longer know what the real world thinks. And I think it's what we're witnessing.
I didn't realize that I should love Project 2025 until I saw how the media was going nuts over it. So now I'm sure that whatever's in it, I will agree with or should agree with.
Well, it's like them making a big deal about JD Vance talking about all the childish cat ladies who want to run our lives. And they kept running this story with a picture of Kamala Harris in news stations around the world, around the country. And I'm like, all the ordinary person is going to see is, oh, if I get Kamala Harris as president, I'm going to be governed by childless cat ladies. I mean, it's like that if I were them, I would have never made that critique because you're reminding them of exactly what ordinary people don't. Everybody knows about the childish cat ladies. We all know them. They got like 25 cats. They're running around everywhere. They don't, and it's a specific type. It's childish cat ladies who like to go around and lecture everybody. They're always spying on their neighbors. They're the nosy neighbor that's really annoying. That's Kamala Harris. That's what government by Kamala Harris would be.
It is funny that I didn't get much flack, but I got some flack for retweeting that meme where it says hope with Obama, hate with Trump. What was the other one? I forget the other two. And I'm like, the irony is that all three.
If they stuck with the H, they would have just been ho for Kamala Harris.
I appreciate the argument, even giving retweeting the message, but sticking the cat lady with Kamala is not the best branding. We got DTQC. After the DNC screwed over Bernie, they got sued for violating their own rules. The DNC lawyers successfully argued that they were not legally bound by their own rules since they are a private organization. Could this be used as antecedent or precedent? Robert, what do you
say one more time?
That the lawyers in the DNC, when they screwed over Bernie, they said they violated their own rules.
Precedent? Not exactly, but generally speaking, they make it very difficult to sue the DNC.
Lying State says, what do you say to those who believe while Trump may get the votes this time out to take the big chair again? That's the despair element, Robert. I mean, how do you prevent people from despairing?
I think they need to win outside the margin of fraud, and they're not even gonna get anywhere close. So the probabilities of prevailing, the laws are better this time around. The awareness is better this time around. Hopefully there'll be legal advocates who are ready to go. And I think you combine those factors, very unlikely that they're going to be able to steal it. And I'm skeptical of people that say, oh, they're just going to steal it, because that's a person that's saying, oh, just don't do anything. Just quit. Just give up and go home. Those are cowards at heart, disguised as cynics. So I find those people to be untrustworthy people when they say that.
I'm going to read this tip because it's a $5 tip, and I'm not endorsing the message. Someone does not like Jeremy. He says he's a shitlord. This is Ganthit, who says he's on the level of Destiny. I disagree. There's some drama in there, but he's totally lost his brain. He's not on the level of Destiny.
He was never. He was always. You have those weak need influencers. You have people that are just interested in covering the news. That's how I see Quartering. He doesn't try to be a influencer. He just covers the news and covers them from an angle that's not being covered by other people.
And sometimes in the news, there's drama, and you gotta cover.
Oh, sure, and he covers that like everybody else. But he's not trying to influence like people like Destiny were. And that guy is just a loser. And
I don't understand.
Just losers. They're just sad.
I don't understand how Destiny got whatever intellectual clout anyone ever gave him.
That's because YouTube likes that side of the opinion. Is my takeaway.
Mandalici, Barnes, please talk about getting ahead of the 2024 election fraud with latches and standing. What can we do?
Yeah, well, it goes to be proactive beforehand. And so I mean, you see like the ballot access cases. Robert Kennedy's making a lot of good law because the Democrats are suing him everywhere, literally everywhere. Everywhere he gets on the ballot, they sue to try to get him off the ballot. I mean, it's unbelievable. But he's winning constantly. They haven't won in court yet. And I think the Democrats are going to set a record for losing against Robert Kennedy, and that's going to create great ballot access laws for us in the future.
Well, I've been asking. I text with Kyle Kemper. He's been on the channel. He's he's doing a lot of work for the campaign, and I would love for Kennedy to say, let's have an open convention, because at least from my predicted stock now, which I'm losing radically because Kamala's still in there. I think what would Kennedy do if he says, I want to go to Chicago and raise hell, or at the very least go in and lose, but make them prove that they are an undemocratic Democrat party? What does he have to do to say open convention and I want to throw my hat in?
Well, I mean, he could show up and they would block him at the door, so he could create some drama.
Damn it! So there's no chance, Robert. I bought him at 1 penny.
Unfortunately, not. The Democratic Party has strict, rigid controls of those things. That will be like the security at the Democratic National Convention will be off the charts. It'll be crazy.
Jonathan G94 has a good point here. He says, canceling Gina Carano was primarily pursued by Kathleen Kennedy to humiliate Jon Favreau and get him to quit. She ultimately failed.
That was one of it. It turns out there are three things. The Disney CEO was in trouble because of the scandal of the stock collapsing and their China involvement. Favreau loved Gina Carano, wanted to put her in a bunch of stuff, and was going to make her a huge star because he recognized she already was a huge star. And Kathleen Kennedy didn't want that to happen. But the bigger backdrop was Disney and Hollywood believed they could weaponize all of their power, economic and cultural, to indoctrinate the world, including forcing anybody, if you ever want an acting job, if you ever want a screenwriting job, in your spare time, you have to be echoing the 1984 principles. And that their fact they just lost on that legally means they're going to be in trouble because they've done that to a bunch of people. So those lawsuits are going to be piling up soon against these corrupt Hollywood companies.
All right, and there was Yael Rivka, who had a humorous meme in there, which I cannot describe, but we'll get back to the tips afterwards. Right now, Robert, so this being put on a terrorist watch list, and I'm reading it, and before I get to the names, because I'm like, oh, this is going to be Jan 6ers who were put on a terror watch list, and we're all going to care. And then, I'm not trying to be cynical or funny. Then when you realize, well, it's Muslim Americans.
Did you get my? I thought this would be a good place to play the South Park.
Dude, Robert, I'll play it. I will preface it by saying I do not endorse this message.
I necessarily approve of this message.
Hold on. I replied back saying, yeah, we won't. We may or may not start with that. Hold on. Let's bring it up here, Cartman. Okay, hold on.
This is basically the modern terror watch list in America.
The South Park is just damn. I feel stupid for not having ever fully appreciated how genius they are. I do not endorse this message entirely. This is hilarious comedy, and if you don't find it funny, well, tough note. You're wearing a shirt that looks like it's highlighting his or her boobs.
Because they were playing around because she was a cross-gender thing. I mean, they were on top of all these things before. They got PC principal before everybody else. The crazy, they've been ahead of the curve on all these things. But that's basically the terror watch list in America.
Well,
other people...
And people didn't care about it back in the day. First of all, everyone was quite swept up. I presume this goes back to the Patriot Act of post 9/11.
Oh, yes.
Everyone's swept up in it. Oh, it's for the greater good. It's for our security. So anybody with a certain sounding last name, put them on a list. This was challenging how they got on the list, and it was the APA challenges that there's no reason to this. We're just stuck on a list, and it screws our people care about it now that there's a bunch of January 6ers on the list. And I say that not as a critique. I say that as that's how people get their eyes opened when it happens to them. Take it from here.
Yeah, I don't know if I've been on the list. I just know I've got random specialized screening in places. My favorite one was in Boston. I think it's whenever I ticked off the wrong people in government, they would stick me on the list for like a year. But because I would go through like a year where specialized screening, all that jazz. My favorite one was in Boston, where I got specialized screening, and I always, usually carry. I'm going to create one for 1776 Law Center. We're going to. I keep mispronouncing. That's supposed to be .com, not .locals, but I keep misdoing that. But 1776lawcenter.com. We're going to be doing these little pocket constitutions and highlight food freedom, some other ones in particular. But I carried a U.S. Constitution with me, a little pocket one, and the TSA guard pulled it out and said, "What are you doing with this?" And I was like, You're kidding, right? This is like an inside joke. This is like a secret camera somewhere. I'm going to be on some punk show or something. I was like, I'm in Boston, and you're asking a lawyer, a constitutional lawyer, why he carries a pocket constitution? And he's like, and then I could tell he was dead serious. He was like, there's some, maybe this is why you're on the list, buddy. It was my favorite poll back in the 1970s, where they quoted from parts of the Declaration of Independence without telling people it was. And they would ask him, does this sound like some commie propaganda to you? And there were some people like, yep. Because, they lost touch with our founding. So what happened is first after 9/11, and then in 2002, they passed new laws. They created the Department of Homeland Security, the fatherland. I remember when it was first passed. A buddy of mine was like, you won't believe me. That they've actually just passed a law that's just like the Nazi law. It's actually called Fatherland Securitas.
But Robert, I'll stop you there. That only makes sense that only strikes the conscience of somebody who knows that you had the fatherland in the past. So the new generation doesn't, and they don't even understand the echoes of the past. Sorry, that's why you gotta live and learn.
And so they created, another one there. So they create TSA, and they say use federal databases to spy on people. Then they create the DHS, and then they say, you know what, you should use all databases everywhere to find out who should get specialized screening and who should be put on a no-fly list. And now there's like 6 agencies. Now, what's interesting is people like Peter Thiel get criticized because he stepped in when this software was getting really invasive. So the law was so broad that it was basically any databases. So the CIA was out spending tons of money to develop databases that could be really invasive in the guise of, we're just trying to see who should be on the no-fly list. So what Peter Thiel does is he's been a longtime critic of a lot of this. He's been, he backed Ron Paul's campaign. He's put his money where his mouth is many times on this issue. He steps in and he buys up the software companies that the CIA thought that had invested in so that he controls them instead of the CIA. And he shifts the software in the direction of actual security rather than being so invasive. And anybody that's familiar with how the watch list has worked, it's nowhere near as bad, actually, as it started. It started out horrendous. I mean, there was all kinds of people on that watch list. If you're a Muslim, you were guaranteed to be on the watch list, pretty much. But other people, too. So now, that doesn't change the fact I have problems with these policies and passed by Congress. I have problems with these agencies. But for some reason, people blame Peter Thiel for the policies and the agency's behavior. When Thiel stepped in with Palantir and created software that limited the invasive quality, not expanded it. And yet people like Whitney Webb, who can't understand these kind of things, if you're going to be critical of somebody, at least read what they've written. At least listen to what they have said. Watch their entire history. Peter Thiel's not quiet or bashful. I mean, Peter Thiel's been one of the biggest promoters of Bitcoin, where President Trump and Robert Kennedy were this past weekend, also now championing and cheering on Bitcoin because he wants it to take away the power of the state to run your life. So, don't turn your allies into adversaries because you're as dumb as Whitney Webb. But in the middle of all this, the question is, what was the legal basis of these terror watch lists? So they brought suit, and there's 2 different components of them. There's the extra screening, and then there's the no-fly list. There's a program called TRIP. They always got to come up with these cute little names. The program is called TRIP, T-R-I-P. It's an acronym. And you can ask the government whether you're on a no-fly list or whether you're subject to special screening, and you're supposed to be given an administrative appeal remedy to correct any misinformation there. However, they won't tell you if you're on the special screening list. They will tell you if you're on the no-fly list. And sometimes they will take you off the no-fly list pursuant to this administrative protocol and procedure. They sued because they said, we don't think Congress ever really clearly gave this power to these agencies. The problem is, yes, they did, sadly. Congress could have still been more clear. It was written by the intelligence agencies to actually make the power even more broad and vague than it should have been. I mean, basically, the Congress gave the agencies the power to use any databases anywhere to do this. Now, they correctly complain that Congress has not given them power beyond flying, that there's no power to use this for traffic stops. There's no power to use this on January 6ers. There's no power to use this for a domestic terror watch list like the FBI is using on January 6ers and Trump supporters. There is that. There's no congressional authority for that they can identify. The problem, of course, how do you think the court got out of that? No standing. No standing, of course. You haven't yet been harmed that way. So even though that's probably illegal, we're not going to do anything about it. The courts love, by the way, all these watch lists. Now, you can find out whether you're on a no-fly list, contrary to what a certain prominent personality claimed to be on a no-fly list, claimed he couldn't find out whether he was on it or not. Yes, you can.
It's the Travelers Redress Inquiry Program, Robert. TRIP.
Yes.
Aptly named.
TRIP for short. Of course. I think that the court's decision is correct that this is what Congress intended, that it did give the agencies this authority. I think they should have given it to them more specifically. It's kind of like taxation authority. It should be presumed an agency doesn't have it unless it's very specifically given to them. But I think there are still constitutional issues with aspects of this, but that part of the case didn't reach the appellate courts. And I think what there needs to be is legislative reform is the bottom line. And then there needs to be remedial action when the agencies are using these databases in ways that they are not authorized by law.
Robert, just on a purely logical level, the idea that this is for actual security and not for control, they implement this for terror watch lists, etc., while they have an open border south at the Mexican border where they're letting in terrorists quite literally.
Supposed to be done with DHS to sharply restrict illegal immigration. Now, that's one of the good tools of it, potentially, if Trump gets in there, is you can use these tools to spot, identify, locate dangerous illegal immigrants and get them out of the country. So I don't dispute that there can be positive use of database activity, database scraping, data monitoring, like some people say that these software shouldn't exist. This technology, because it can be used for bad purposes, it shouldn't be used for any purpose. We should ban its existence. I think that's probably not practical because China's going to do it anyway. So, I think unilateral disarmament probably isn't the most strategic, tactically wise program. But I don't dispute that it can be used for good. It can be used for good. It can be used for bad, like almost any tool. And the degree to which it's used for good or bad depends on who we elect to positions of power and courts holding people accountable.
Robert, let me bring up a few here. MK Ultra One, David, the 90s called. They want their dial-up modem back. Dude, you're telling me I've been dealing. It took me an hour to upload my Twitter video. I'm jogging at least so I could listen to Ben Carson. Ben Carson on Tucker Carlson is an amazing listen. You have to listen to that. Ginger Ninja in the house, a member of our locals community as well. One, Robert Viva, you need to look into what's going on with Mike Glover, former Green Beret. I'm screen grabbing it because I think I had this on the list before. Bogus criminal charges in Utah. It's been months. They ended up dropping the charges, all because they're BS, but he lost his children to the system. You can be completely innocent, but when the power comes after you, absolutely. I'm going to look up Mike Glover. Ginger Ninja, thank you. Eastside Tony, Vegas shooting was a Saudi attempt to assassinate MBS gone wrong. Who's MBS? But I think I heard this theory as well. That's
the Saudi leader.
Okay, they needed to create a mass casualty event in order to pull out the Saudi assassination squad. I heard that. Robert, Eastside Tony, what are your thoughts on the Bitcoin dollar and the United States' ability to use laws to hyperinflate the dollar into Bitcoin? Oh, I thought you were going to ask what Trump said on Bitcoin yesterday, which I would have been able to answer myself. I'm not able to answer that question.
That was good. I thought, Robert Kennedy talked about a Bitcoin Fort Knox. So it's very promising that we're seeing, financial freedom find political acceptance in multiple political arenas, not only Kennedy's campaign, but particularly President Trump's campaign. So that, I think, is very hopeful for those of us that, like Peter Thiel, see it as a very promising tool for individual freedom against central banks and central planners who want to use it for their own nefarious purposes.
Robert, but I was listening to RFK a little bit, but then Trump, and I'm saying, okay, fine. So he's given a good speech talking about the value of Bitcoin, and he's going to appeal to the nerdlingers, and I say that with love and respect, but that's a very small portion of the population. You talk about big demographics who don't understand, care about Bitcoin whatsoever. How do you reach the swaths of the population that the Democrat-controlled media is going to reach? Like, what's Trump's tactic to do that right now? They got to get down and funny memes and stuff like as well.
Well, but really, it's you look at where they're at, that they're not on Democrat-controlled media that much. I mean, increasingly they're on podcast, they're on social media, they're on TikTok, and they do their own thing. So that they don't get their sources from like my guess is your audience skews very old on all media, Fox, MSNBC, CNN, etc. So that they've lost the ability to control the narrative with young voters. That Rumble, Musk freeing up X, that these have created independent social media platforms, and then just the prevalence. I mean, they've grown up with podcasts as normal, as a way to gain information. And when the left lost people like Joe Rogan, they're in big trouble.
All right, what do we move on to now, Robert?
Oh, we got the initiative. Speaking of ballot access, Robert Kennedy keeps winning those cases. Hopefully, he will continue to against the Democratic Party's multiple efforts to keep him off the ballot. What's amazing is because I'm on a lot of these, I'm on both Republican and Democratic email lists from past political activities and clients I've represented, because I represented people across the spectrum. I'm on the Libertarian list, the Green Party list, the taxpayer. I'm on everybody's list. But it's amazing. I'll get the Democratic Party list. I'll get notification about how Republicans are trying to do bad things on voter and ballot access. And it's like, it's right at the same time that they're filing suit to keep people from being able to vote for Robert Kennedy. It's like their lack of self-awareness is striking. I think there's something unique to this sort of Soviet Stasi safe space world that makes people unable to hear critics, that they can't see themselves even in the mirror. And so one of the efforts was in California, where Kamala is from. They basically tried to make it, they in the name of helping workers, they were going to drive independent contractors out of business. All Uber drivers were going to be out of business because they were forcing them to be employees with workers' comp and other protections. The unions thought they could unionize everybody. In fact, what a lot of truckers said is we can't be truckers in California then. And what a lot of Uber drivers said is Uber driving won't exist in the state of California. So they put on the initiative, they let the voters decide. And the voters decided, no, we want people to stay independent contractors. We don't want them to be forced to be W-2 employees under the control of the state administrative matrix. And so then the union members came in and they sued, saying, well, that violates the workers' comp rules, and that this constitutional provision tops this controversial constitutional provision. And so the question was, is the initiative enforceable or not? And thankfully, the California Supreme Court unanimously said we have to favor initiatives. When the people of the state put something through, we have to presume it's legally valid unless it's clear that there's something else in the Constitution that prohibits it or precludes it that is not negated by this initiative. And they said there isn't, that in fact, it wasn't exclusive to the legislature to govern workers' comp. You could have the people pass their own legislation through initiatives. So it was, and for all those that are independent contractors in California, it was very good news, because otherwise that prop would have been thrown out and they'd have been back in economic no man's land due to the craziness of California's rules and laws.
I was going to say something there. And obviously they wanted the independent contractors because it's more tax effective from the employee perspective, which pisses off the unions because they want the union dues and they want the control over the employees. Right. Politics ruins everything.
No doubt about it. Well, speaking of politics ruins everything, you know what happens when you're on a Navy ship and you crash into a foreign tanker in a foreign land? That's the case of the USS John McCain, which the only reason the U.S. courts were even hearing it is because of the old Titanic law. That was the law that was passed way before the Titanic in 1851, which gave this immunity if you owned a ship and the ship went and caused an accident. You, as the owner, were only on the hook for the freight and the vessel. You weren't on the hook for any harm you caused anybody else, unless you, as the owner, knew about it. It created a system incentivizing owners to not control their own ships and to not know what's going on in their own ships. The Titanic infamously used it with some pals on the Supreme Court of a certain owner of the Titanic to be able to walk away from much liability for all the harm they caused. including no one could sue for wrongful death. They could only sue for the freight. And who knows, maybe the owner of that ship wanted some of those people to go down with that ship because he helped found a certain federal institution called the Federal Reserve, if you still consider it federal.
Did you do a hush hush yet on the Titanic, or is this the one that's coming up?
Yes, I did. I did a hush hush on it, so you can explore it a little bit more there. All the different alternative narratives. Was it even the Titanic that sunk? That was a lot of fun. But the USS John McCain, kind of named after John McCain, and kind of like John McCain, just couldn't last. It collided with an oil tanker in Singapore. The oil tanker is Liberian. Now, none of these ships are really Liberian, but that's the favorite place for all your big tankers and your big ships, your international ships, to register because of certain legal and political protections that come with it. Now, the oil tanker says it's all in the fault of the USS John McCain. The people in the USS John McCain say, no, some fault of it is on the oil tanker. So the oil tanker uses that old Titanic law to try to limit their liability, and they sue in U.S. courts. But because the incident happened in Singapore's waters, Singapore's laws applied. But because Singapore is an old English common law jurisdiction, it mostly is English common law that was actually being applied rather than something specific to Singapore's laws beyond that. And so you end up in a U.S. court with Singapore law applying English common law. But of course, at the end of the day, they decide that the U.S. is 80% at fault. The judge finds different reasons to shift some blame to the oil tanker. But the problem for the oil tanker is they're like, okay, we want indemnity for our 20% responsibility, because this is hundreds of millions of dollars of damages in total. We want some for our 20%. We want the U.S. to pay because they owe 80%. And what do you think the U.S. government says? Oh, no, we got sovereign immunity. You sued in U.S. courts, pal. So guess what? There is no indemnity claim. You got to pay the full freight. So even though you only caused 20% of the damage, you got to pay all the amount. And so they get screwed because they made the mistake of suing in a U.S. court to try to get remedy and relief. But it does finally explain what happened to the USS John McCain. There were systemic flaws in the Navy hierarchy that led to that accident.
I'm trying to add this to the stage. 10 people died in that disaster.
Yes.
10 sailors died in the collision. Families of the 5 sailors attended the court-martial of the former McCain commanding officer.
And the doctrine of sovereign immunity is all this bogus nonsense about we can't, second-guess military decisions. And all it's done is it's designed to allow the U.S. military to screw up, cause the deaths of American soldiers, and then not pay a penny for doing so.
Going to get some chat here. Ithaca 37 Cato $5 says, how can a middle class, working class person buy just one Bitcoin? 68. You could buy fractions. They sell them in like every fractional.
These days, I remember when it was the cost of a pizza.
Today, CoinDesk has one Bitcoin priced at 68,000. Can you buy a percent? Oh yeah, you could buy like down to. You could buy a penny's worth of Bitcoin. And then if it goes up, you'll have 5 pennies tomorrow. Bro Pro 66 says, if George Washington would have had the attitude of they're just going to cheat me, never would have won the revolution. Ganthit
No doubt about that.
says, I watched you and Barnes because I can be assured at what you believe you're doing, whether I agree with your ideology or opinions in what you're doing. Jeremy has, and will always be a grifter, believes in nothing and only. Look, I don't want to start it. Everyone's entitled to their opinion, and I don't want to.
I like the quartering. Yeah, you can dislike the quartering. That's fine. But mostly he covers news, so he's not really like an aggressive commentator.
Well,
he has his opinions and his takes, but it's just not your institutional media takes. That's why there's a market for it.
Well, and Ganthid, there's another one from Ganthid. It's
and
$20.
He works really hard. He researches everything.
He works. He definitely works hard. Ganthid says in a $20 post up there, it says, I've been watching Jeremy the Quartering since before you were streaming. You haven't watched the Quartering for any length of time. I think I have though, but maybe I'm in his. Okay, he has a very long history. Yada yada yada. Okay, Ganthid, thank you. Patty F. Weber, $5 says, is the tall man supposed to be Joe Biden? I'm comparing to Hunter.
Oh yeah, do you think he's a fake guy? Do you think he's the what do they call it? Stunt double?
No, but if they were going to do a body double, Robert, they do one who can finish a sentence. What's the purpose of slipping in an incompetent body double?
Well, maybe that one was AI. Maybe the one walking around outside is the body double, but the one that was on the TV broadcast is AI Joe Biden.
I would have been more inclined
And
to think.
they left in some screw ups to make it seem real.
Well,
because remember when they
that's.
did the AI Joe Biden on the phone, people are like, that can't be Joe Biden.
I'm looking at you,
Oh,
kid. I'm looking at you, kid.
yeah,
No, I
Kamala
would be.
Harris. Yeah.
I would be more inclined to think that they wanted to throw Biden under the bus, so they get an actor and slap on one of those rubber faces. I'm being half serious here, people. But yeah, no, I've heard people saying that the height didn't make any sense. Are you going to talk about Elon Musk's Kamala AI? Oh yeah, we did. I played that video. That's from Free SC01. I unfortunately was never blessed to have any children of my own. I have 3 cats and 1 dog. I am not a crazy cat lady. I believe that. Well, I'll get to this. This is Denise and too.
You can be pets, and lots of people don't have kids of their own. It's more of we all know of that what Vance is describing. It's the certain deliberately childless 25 cats who wants to run your life. That's the 3 components.
I want to finish it just because it says here, I believe in the Jesus Christ and the Constitution of these United States of America, and I mind my own business.
Yeah, my little sister's a big. She's got Lord knows how many animals. There's like 15 of them running around. There's like hamsters. There's like guinea pigs. There's like well, I mean, you got about you got the local disabled dog clinic there in the Viva.
Oh God, Robert, I'm not losing my temper with them. I just want them to. It's the whining of the dog because she gets no pleasure out of life except for eating. No, but JD gave a follow up.
That theft video is still going to be all time classic. That whenever you left. Waited until you left. We gave it a good amount of time. Then could figure out a way to open the door to get into the jacket that had hidden inside of it the candy.
Robert,
that was like all time heist level.
The dog is very smart, and I believe she's a reincarnated human. But JD Vance gave an interview, and he said it's not the cat lady. What I was specifically talking about is the type of person who's infatuated with abortion, infatuated with living something of a selfish, independent life, and obviously not people who didn't have kids for whatever reason or can't procreate for medical reasons. Right, of course, yes. So it's. I mean, everybody understands, and they've just
there's an image. I mean, maybe it's a complete caricature and a stereotype. But we all know that caricature and stereotype. The people that are a little crazy and that like to run the world, like
to rat on you when you're too close to people outdoors during COVID time. Just Thinking says Trump should demand that the debate between him and Kamala should be broadcast live on TV. That would be great. Rumble with Joe Rogan and Tucker Carlson. Well, those would be biased moderators, or at least alleged biased moderators. I'll be the moderator there. I'll be totally objective. Harry Toe says my guess is that the October surprise is Trump and RFK going on Joe Rogan, but Kamala will refuse. That would be interesting. And Eastside Tony, what are your thoughts on the Bitcoin dollar? We got that. Yeah, I got that. All right. How many do we have left? And should we do the rest in the locals only after party?
Yeah, we got the nature of defamation has come up in some cases recently, and it's just a good recourse on that. I'll be bringing suit for Robert Kennedy soon on a defamation claim. And then when juror bias is actionable, when you can do something, and how courts weasel their way out of biased jurors. And they do it by how they manipulate jury selection in the first place.
Matt G. Hammond says, can we watch the movie Dave as the next locals movie? It will show us how they replace the president.
It was up there with, what was the other one? No, I think it was number 2.
Did you do,
right.
Have you done Bulworth yet? I think you did Bulworth, right?
I haven't, but I've never been a huge Bulworth fan. It's like okay, but
look, I can't. I watched it. I watched it 25 or 30 years ago. So, okay. So, Robert, what we're gonna do? We're gonna end it on Rumble and Twitter. We're gonna go over to locals. What do you have scheduled for this week? Remind everybody before we leave.
So tomorrow is going to be also Amos Miller's case. We will discuss over on locals because I'm working on a big brief because the man that's up for vice presidential nomination of Kamala Harris. One Governor Shapiro of Pennsylvania, who's running around attacking President Trump, believe it or not, on issues of being pro-worker and pro-freedom. And this is the guy who's locked up farm workers illegally in the state of Pennsylvania. This is the guy who's trying to shut down an Amish farmer, Amos Miller, from even being able to sell his food to anybody anywhere. And this guy has the nerve, the chutzpah, to go up and attack Trump on freedom and workers when he's busy violating workers' freedom every single day in the state of Pennsylvania. So we'll talk about that case, the defamation case and the juror bias case over on locals.
And I replied to that tweet, like Josh Shapiro, who is the governor of the state that basically facilitated the live execution of a president. He should watch the way he talks about that person. That
And the guy who bragged about stealing the 2020 election
he said Trump is not going to get it. We'll make sure that Trump doesn't get it. I'll pull up that tweet a little
while
later.
he was Attorney General of the state of Pennsylvania.
On my end, everybody, I start the drive back tomorrow. We're going to take our time. I'm going to see, maybe I'll hit Tim Pool up when we go through Virginia, and I'm thinking about Butler, but I'm not sure that would be a big detour. But I'll be live in as much as I can with updates.
It will be on tomorrow, 1 o'clock. I think probably 2 o'clock Eastern. On What Are the Odds? People's Pundit Daily with Richard Barris, explaining to people why Kamala Harris will be a disaster for the Democratic Party.
From your mouth to God's ears.
One of the greatest picks that Trump could have ever made.
Well, the media is already saying that Trump regrets his pick of J.D. Vance, Robert. They thrive on sowing discord.
Tells you how good of choice J.D. Vance was.
All right, we are ending on Twitter, done now, and we're going to end on Rumble. Everybody, let me give everybody the link one more time and come for the after party on, what am I doing? I'm trying to get, this is the link. I'm going to go put it in the chat here. Link to Locals, and come on over. But before you leave, if you're not coming over to Locals, come, but drop a like, make sure that you're subscribed. And there was one more that just came in here. It says, we have to remember the Olympics has always been weird, ancient, pagan sex stuff, says Dan Vicious. And Joe Mascu says, by the way, as a native-born Californian who read most of the state constitution, that document is rife for collisions of one right against another. All right. We're going to, how do I do this here? I got to go like this.
We probably should also talk about Christopher Wray being a rat.
Let's definitely do that, but I want to make sure not to end the wrong stream. I'm going to go with my I'm going to end the stream manually in Rumble. I'm going to leave it going on Locals. So Locals, we're there in 3 seconds. Everybody else, if you're not coming, let's start off with Christopher Wray being a sneaky little rascal. Ending on Rumble. Thank you all for being here. Locals, here we come. Bada bing, bada boom. Now let me just make sure.
I'm not an anti-pet person, but I am a little bit prejudiced against pets.
Well, I find
all my family love pets. My little sister loves pets. I always see them, and I see wolves in disguise and tigers in disguise. They're just waiting to pounce on you.
Well, but Robert, you're a unique person. You like to be around water, but not in it. You know, you like animals, but don't want them in your house. I appreciate that. Yeah. I also find it weird. If anybody doesn't love dogs, I find that weird, but I'm prepared to give them a second chance. So Robert, okay, so Kim Cheadle done. She's resigned. I don't know what happened. What happens to her next after this week? Anything?
A nice big corporate payoff for trying to at least facilitate the assassination of President Trump.
Okay.
That's my prediction.
May she never be welcome among civilized people ever again.
And look at what Wray did. Wray knew he was spreading a lie that's going to go global to suggest that Trump was faking the assassination attempt. And you know and again, this is a guy that Trump put in that position. So hopefully it's another reminder to Trump to get rid of people like this.
Well, so what Wray did this week, for those who may not have known, I'm trying to find an image here. Okay, hold up. I'm going to see if I can find a picture. Wray suggested, we don't know, it might have been shrapnel or glass from the teleprompter, as if that possibly can minimize what we witnessed, as if that could possibly, it was only glass. And then meanwhile, Corey Comparator is still dead, and people are like denying that, I guess, or minimizing that. So he did that. What was I just about to say, though? Oh, cripe. Okay, so there is, I'm trying to find the picture where it's not obvious that there's an injury to his ear. It's been 2 weeks and a day. If it was a hole or whatever, they glued it. Have you seen the picture? I'm trying not to have a reflexive, I don't want to address the discussion, but have you seen the picture allegedly after the fact, and it doesn't look like there's anything there?
No, I haven't. I remember seeing the blood. I remember seeing him go right to the ear, and then I remember seeing the blood pour down. I think the latest Christopher Wray update was there was something red flowing from Trump's head, but we're not sure what it was.
Well, let me bring this up. And the thing is this, I'm not going to avoid answering or looking into the question. This allegedly is the photograph that Sousa posted before they took down his Twitter account. Now, the world in which we live, I don't know who the Sousa account was. You can't access it anymore. I don't know if it was official. I don't know if this photograph predates the attempt. I don't know if I could see something here, maybe where they stitched it together and it's glued up after 2 weeks. I don't know anything. You don't know what you can believe on the internet anymore. And that was the news that was running around. All that I know is that the people pushing that story on Twitter are confirmed demonstrable liars who everything they've ever said has been a lie. And therefore, I'm inclined to think they're lying yet again. But I haven't been able to find the truth of
It's
that.
like there's no question shots were fired because a man is dead and another one seriously injured. So it's like, I mean, it's like, what's your point? That you think Trump got hit by something else? I mean, it's really a lame point that they're trying to make. It
chat
just
is saying,
it shows who Christopher Wray really is. He
Well,
exposed himself completely in that moment.
it could, we don't know what it is. The chat is saying in locals that it's an old photo, and I should have done a TinEye or a Google reverse image search, which I'm going to do right now. All right, Robert. So what are the other last stories that we have here?
The Amos Miller update, briefly discussed it, but basically the state is obsessed with shutting him down once again. We're filing our opposition brief this week. There's a telephonic hearing scheduled before the Commonwealth Court on August 7th. So that if it's still my advice, whatever you can get from Amos Miller organicfarm.com, get now, because there's there's always a risk with the Pennsylvania courts, sadly, that with the Commonwealth Court in particular, that they do something crazy and try to shut him down because the state continues to demand it. With no new grounds, by the way. They've got no additional factual grounds whatsoever. All their other prior factual grounds have been completely rebutted. Their legal grounds completely rebutted. This is a violation of constitutional rights that they're trying to do, but it doesn't stop them. And it gives you a sense of how nuts they are. And this is the same Commonwealth Court that one of the judges on the court illegally imprisoned 2 farm workers just a few months ago. So it's a court that is supposed to be supervising corrupt government actors, but often is aiding and abetting corrupt government actors. So we'll see what happens. But if Shapiro ends up on the ticket, by golly, the issues about Amos Miller's case, about these other farm workers' case, about what's happening to the Amish and the wrongful criminal prosecution of them and persecution of them in the state of Pennsylvania, a state they exist in because its founders promised not to persecute them, now is persecuting them en masse at multiple levels. That's going to be right on the top of the agenda. If Shapiro ends up being the VP, the name Amos Miller may come up in the vice presidential debate. So I think personally, I hope Harris does pick him because it will elevate how nuts of a governor this guy has been.
Mm-hmm. I'm looking up the picture as we talk in real time. I can't find that picture's on the internet more than 2 days ago. So I'll keep looking into it and see what I can discover. Sorry, Robert, I interrupted you there.
It's probably a good distraction for the Democrats from Joe Biden suddenly growing 8 inches. I mean, it was like, hold on. Like first I thought people were making that up, and I was like, whoa, how did he suddenly get so tall? I was like, maybe this is robotics. Maybe this is like high-end robotics rather than like a stunt double. It'd be tough to find somebody that matches relatively the face features, but suddenly looks much taller. But yeah, it was weird.
Mm-hmm.
But we have a juror bias case and a defamation case still left.
So the defamation was accusing someone of medical malpractice. And the question was whether or not the publication was made with actual malice, if the individual was a what is it called? A single purpose public figure, whether they became a public figure for whatever the reason. And so none of it is, it should not be new to anyone watching us now, Robert, but bottom line, it goes over those questions as to private person, don't have to show actual malice, public figure, even if it's a single purpose, actual malice, and whether or not they alleged actual malice in that case.
And when you're involved in public activities, or you go and blog about things, or you end up being subject to lawsuits that are high profile because they're government connected cases, chances are you're going to end up being a public actor. The 2 other components on defamation, there was another case out of the Maine Supreme Court as well that concerned, if you publish false statements about another person, even if all it does is imply fact, you can be sued for it. And if you apply, you don't even have to show economic damages, or what's called special damages, if you say something bad about their profession, their occupation, their status in life, or you claim they're a criminal. And it was in the other version of this is false light invasion of privacy claims. And that is somebody put my name in false light. They did so. That would be severely offensive to a reasonable person. And they did so with what we essentially, if you're alleging false light invasion of privacy, you always have to allege actual malice. Whereas with defamation, you only have to allege actual malice if it involves a public figure for the purpose of that lawsuit. You can have somebody who's not normally a public figure, but for the purpose of that lawsuit is a public figure. What's interesting is what this other case, and then the third part is republication. So there's people that think if they told a lie 4 years ago, they can keep republishing that lie to new people and not be sued if they're outside the statute of limitations. There's a nitwit who thinks, it's someone in Maine, by the way, thinks he can do that about Robert Kennedy. And he's about to find out otherwise because he told a lie 3 years ago, and the Maine statute of limitations is 2 years. But then just last year, he decided to republish new lies and expanded on them. And he thought he was somehow magically immune because of the old lies being outside the statute of limitations. It's like, no, the new lies are right within the statute of limitations, as he's soon to discover. The good reminder out there for people that think they can just, oh, hey, someone didn't sue about this lie 10 years ago, so I can just go out and republish it. Nope. Now that's a new accrual that gives a new right to sue within the statute of limitations. The favorite part of this Maine Supreme Court case was, so this apartment complex decides they don't like some of their employees. They not only fire them, they go down to the local police department and they get the local police department to issue a criminal trespass notice against them. And the only basis is they're saying, hey, this used to be an employee. We're prohibiting our former employees from coming on here. Can you just make sure this notice goes out? But what they do is they then take that criminal trespass notice, publish it to the world, and tell it. And when people say, what are you saying these people are criminals? Well, all they would say is it was the police department that issued it. And so some people sue and like, you're implying I'm a criminal. I mean, you fired me on bogus grounds. And so rather than, you don't want me to tell anybody about it, you get the criminal trespass order, fine. But then you publish it and you make it sound like the police ordered it because I'm a criminal. And that's why I got fired. So they brought suit and the Maine Supreme Court says, yeah, that's actionable. And they thought they were protected because they never themselves specifically stated the person was a criminal. They just said, here, there's a criminal trespass notice that's been issued by the police about our ex-employee. And the point is, when you imply a statement of fact, that too is actionable as libel.
Robert, look at this. Although this is, I'm listening, but I'm also multitasking here because we're going to get to the bottom of this. This is the photograph, and this is from another source, HJ News. I don't know what that is. It says Republican presidential candidate. He boards his plane. Blah blah blah. Saturday, July 27th. So that would be yesterday. West Palm Beach, Florida. Trump is headed to Nashville, and we're going to zoom in. That looks like the picture. And then the question is simply, are we not able to see? There seems to be something right there.
Yeah.
And the issue,
it looked like it only nicked his ear.
Brendan Herrera did it. Well, Brandon Herrera did a video where even if it had gone, within 2+ weeks, things can heal up very, very surprisingly well. And there might be makeup on it. I have no idea. I think the bottom line is that the guy, Souza, whatever the photographer's name was, is that he put the word hit in quotes, as if to suggest Trump wasn't actually shot, and as a result of which he seems to have deleted his Twitter account. So we found the source image. It's not an old image. The only question is, what can you see in that? Because I can see something that I would say looks like it was a graze, but I don't know. Let's just bring it back up.
That's how I took it at the time. It took, but what is the ear bleeds badly.
Yeah. And
so to heal, it'd probably take about a week or two to heal.
Right.
So
there.
Especially if it was like part of it was knocked off, you can, sew it back on. The ear's useful that way.
It's 2 weeks in a day. Like I won't tell people the types of surgeries that I've had, but things can heal up a lot in 2 weeks where you might not even see the stitches on your privates. Okay, we got one more.
Yeah, juror bias. So how do courts get away with that? So like when you have a case that has a biased juror, you discover it's biased, that they really weren't forthcoming during jury selection. You find out the social media, that if you'd known it beforehand, you wouldn't have picked them.
Mm-hmm.
That you bring it to the attention of the court. The court's job is to do a dutiful investigation if there's a non-frivolous claim of any degree of jury bias, because you're constitutionally entitled to an impartial jury. The way they get around this is they don't directly talk to the juror and don't bring him into further review. And especially they use juror selection to do this. What they do is they make sure all the questions are opinion questions and none of them are fact questions, because then they can say, well, they didn't lie. That's just their opinion. Their opinion was they wouldn't be biased about this topic. So even though they say just the opposite on their Facebook page, that's just their opinion. So it can't be a factual lie. So it's not grounds of juror misconduct. So we don't have to remove them. That's why judges love to ask questions like, can you agree you won't be biased? It's the most ridiculous question of all time, because a biased juror will never recognize they're biased. That's the very nature of bias. But they love to use those questions so that they can't be held to account when it turns out there's a biased juror on the jury.
Fantastic. And speaking of fantastic realist, $5 says in 1922, 1952, 1958, the Dems candidate for president did not get the most primary votes. They all lost the general election. If a candidate cannot win a sample of voters, not likely they can win a bigger pool of voters. Ithaca 37 Cato says, everything just got bumped. Wow, way off the bottom. Crap. Suggested for Saturday movie night, top samurai films: 7 Samurai, Harikiri, Yojimbo, Throne of Blood, 13 Assassins. Seawave Drive or Seawave Doctor says, what do you think about Trump slotting Massey to head the Department of Agriculture? I mean, obviously, I think
that's
awesome. Amazing.
That'd be awesome. Yeah, I mean, Rand Paul, Secretary of State. I was on with Rand this past week. I was on, my internet had gone out, so I was on one of those hotspots. Yeah. And I didn't realize till later there's a little bit of, you get that little weird echo thing in the volume. I didn't realize that until I was rewatching it later. It's like that gum. But it's always fun to be on with those guys. But what was that? What were we just talking about?
Massey, Douglas Massey.
Make Rand Paul Secretary of State, make Tulsi Gabbard Secretary of Defense, make Robert Kennedy head of either the CIA or the FDA. I'd make Robert Kennedy head of the CIA, and then take says Mary Holland from Children's Health Defense, make her charge of the FDA. Put Thomas Massey in as Secretary of Agriculture. Boy, we would have some real fun if it had that kind of administration. You're on mute, by the way.
There's a loose. I'm just gonna go with the name. Let's see. I'm gonna go back and see if I can get my mic here. It's on the default now. Okay. Let me get back to where I was. It said everyone wants to talk about Project 2025, but no one mentions Agenda 2030, 2050, which should scare the hell out of everyone. That's Kimmy49. Southern Flora, $5 says Allison Morrow interviewed a farmer named Baker. Excellent interview for food and farmer freedom. Will Rogers, yesterday Patrick Burns stated that he had hacked the Venezuelan government and has it all. This is a phrase he has used when discussing the Tina Peters case supported by the America Project. He describes the Venezuelan government as the mafia controlling the U.S. election equipment, software, mob organized chart. Okay, that's Patrick Byrne. I know he's done good stuff in the past, at least from what I remember. Ithaca 37 Cato, how can a middle-class, working-class person buy Bitcoin? Okay, I got that. George Washington. So if I've missed any, I apologize, people, but I think we've done good, and I'm going to refresh one more time.
I like the idea of someone asked about General Flynn for FBI director. That could be cool.
I just saw that one, and I think, let me see, go back down here. That was Norm 1320, General Flynn for the director. And 2 things. On your locals news feed, would you be able to tag the top links to Amos Miller support food 71076 sites, maybe for the other Pennsylvania farmers too? This is from Ithaca 37 Cato. Any way to do a mass investigation and prosecution of members of Congress over their money laundering schemes? And the answer to that would be, I presume, no.
You could, but it's going to require a different set of people in positions of power.
Oh, that just reminded me of a question that now I've absolutely... Damn it, I forgot what it was going to be.
I'd make Ron Paul Secretary of Treasury. And then we got to figure out where would Vivek... Vivek would be great at some agency we want to destroy. Because he wants to destroy the administrative state.
Let's see. Well, what did Vivek have his run-in with that would give him a particular... Well, he could be... I can't pretend to even know. The military-industrial complex, money laundering, prosecuting members of Congress. Crap, I'm not going to remember. All right, Robert. So that's it. I'm on the road as of tomorrow. So my schedule will be even worse than it typically is, but I'll be back in Florida, free state of Florida by Friday, hopefully, and back in the studio. Robert, you and I will be in touch. Locals, we'll see you tomorrow and throughout the week. Thank everyone for being here, and see you tomorrow, peeps. Peace out.